The Force binds all things across the galaxy, connecting every living being in an invisible web of energy and destiny. For millennia, the Jedi spoke of balance, of harmony between light and dark. But what happens when something from beyond the stars arrives? Something not born of the Force, not bound by its ancient rules, carrying power that answers to no Sith or Jedi. The galaxy was about to learn that some forces transcend even the cosmic energy that flows through all living things. The first sign was a streak of blue and red cutting through the black void between Tatooine and its neighboring systems. No hyperspace signature preceded it. No ship's transponder code registered on Imperial sensors. It moved faster than any starfighter, faster than most light freighters could manage even in hyperspace. And it was falling. The object, no, the being, crashed into the desert wastes of an Imperial-occupied mining colony on Rylotha's smaller moon. The impact crater measured 30 meters across and glowed with residual heat that took hours to dissipate. Stormtroopers cordoned off the site within minutes, their white armor stark against the copper-colored regolith. Officers barked orders. Scientists deployed scanning equipment that immediately began malfunctioning in ways their training had never prepared them for. At the center of the crater lay a man. He wore a suit of blue and red, skin-tight yet somehow armored, with a symbol emblazoned across his chest, an angular shape that resembled no insignia in any Imperial database. His cape, impossibly undamaged by atmospheric re-entry, spread beneath him like spilled blood. His skin showed no burns, no lacerations, no sign whatsoever that he had just survived a fall that should have vaporized any living being. When the stormtroopers approached with binders and shock prods, he opened his eyes. They were blue, a crystalline, almost luminescent blue that seemed to hold entire skies within them. He sat up slowly, confusion written across features that were remarkably human despite every scanner insisting his cellular structure was decidedly not. The troopers raised their blasters. Standard protocol demanded they fire first when encountering unknown xenobiological threats. But something in those eyes made the sergeant hesitate. "Where am I?" the stranger asked, his voice carrying clearly despite the thin atmosphere requiring the stormtroopers to use helmet comms. The words came out in perfect galactic basic, though linguistic analysis later would determine he somehow spoke it without ever learning it, as if understanding and being understood was simply something he did. The sergeant's finger tensed on the trigger. "You are under Imperial jurisdiction. Identify yourself immediately, or—" The stranger moved. One moment he was sitting in the crater. The next, he stood 20 meters away, having crossed the distance faster than human eyes could track. The stormtroopers spun, weapons tracking, but their target had already moved again. He appeared directly before the sergeant and with gentle pressure, so gentle it seemed almost apologetic, pushed the blaster aside. "I don't want to hurt anyone," the stranger said. "I'm looking for something. A probe. Kryptonian design. It came through here or somewhere near here. Have you seen anything unusual? Any technology that doesn't belong?" The sergeant, to his credit, managed to activate his comm despite the terror flooding his nervous system. "Command, we have a code Vermilion. Repeat, code Vermilion. Unknown entity with Force-like abilities. Requesting immediate." He never finished. Reinforcements arrived in the form of 2 AT-ST walkers, their weapon systems locking onto the stranger. Heavy blaster cannons swiveled, targeting computers, screaming alerts that made no sense. The stranger wasn't carrying any power signature their sensors recognized, yet the energy readings emanating from him registered off every scale. "Last warning," a voice boomed from the lead walker speakers. "Surrender or be eliminated." The stranger looked up at the walking tanks. Something flickered across his face, not fear, but a profound sadness, as though he already knew how this would end and regretted the necessity of it. He lifted slowly into the air, defying gravity with the casual ease most beings used to breathe. The AT-STS opened fire. Crimson bolts of superheated plasma converged on the floating figure, enough firepower to punch through durasteel plating. The stranger simply stood there, hovered there. The blaster bolts struck him directly, and where they made contact, they dissipated into harmless light, absorbed by skin that shouldn't exist, that couldn't exist according to every law of physics Imperial scientists understood. Then he moved again, a blur of motion that ended with both AT-STs toppled onto their sides, their pilot shaken but miraculously unharmed. The stranger had struck with precision, disabling without killing, showing restraint that seemed impossibly naive in a galaxy built on violence. "I'm sorry," he said to the overturned walkers, and he genuinely sounded it. "But I need answers, and I need them now. Please, just tell me where I am. What system is this? What galaxy?" The transmission that followed reached Imperial Center within hours. Grand Moff Tarkin, already furious over the Death Star's destruction, watched the holographic footage 3 times before issuing his orders. The message was simple: capture the entity alive. Deploy whatever resources necessary. And notify Lord Vader immediately. Across the galaxy, on the bridge of the Superstar Destroyer Executor, Darth Vader paused mid-conversation with an admiral. Through the Force, he had felt something, a presence unlike anything he had encountered in decades. Not Force-sensitive, yet radiating power that made the dark side itself seem to recoil and investigate simultaneously. It felt alien, foreign, wrong in ways that suggested it came from somewhere the Force did not touch. "My lord," the Admiral ventured carefully. Vader's respirator filled the silence with its mechanical breathing. "Set course for Rylotha's moon," he commanded, "and prepare a full legion. We may have found something far more valuable than rebel bases." The stranger, still hovering above the disabled Imperial forces, looked up at the unfamiliar constellations wheeling overhead. 2 suns dominated the horizon, their light somehow different from the yellow sun he knew, their radiation feeding his cells, but in an unfamiliar rhythm. He felt strong, but not quite himself, as if he were operating at slightly lower capacity, his powers muted by some fundamental difference in this place. Wherever this place was, he had been following the Kryptonian probe through deep space, hoping it might contain information about his lost homeworld, when reality itself seemed to tear open. The wormhole or rift or whatever it had been pulled him through before he could resist, and now he found himself in a galaxy he didn't recognize, surrounded by an empire he didn't know, with no clear way home. His name was Kal-El. On his adopted world, they called him Clark Kent. But to those who knew what he truly was, he had another name: Superman. And he had just become the most dangerous variable in a galactic civil war. If you want to see more characters enter the Star Wars galaxy, hit that subscribe button and drop the name of a character you'd want to see in the comments below. May the Force be with you. Grand Moff Tarkin stood in the command center of the Imperial garrison, his gaunt features illuminated by the pale blue glow of holographic displays. Around him, technicians worked frantically to compile data on the stranger, cross-referencing every known species, every documented Force user, every whisper of legend that might explain what they'd witnessed. The results were universally inconclusive. His cellular structure defies classification, the chief xenobiologist reported, her voice tight with frustration. At the molecular level, he appears humanoid, carbon-based, oxygen-breathing. But the density readings are impossible. His cells absorb and store electromagnetic radiation in ways that violate thermodynamic principles. And his mitochondrial analogs. She trailed off, shaking her head. They process energy we can't even properly measure. Tarkin studied the frozen hologram of the stranger hovering above the battlefield, blaster bolts dissipating against his chest like rain against durasteel. Can he be killed? Unknown, sir. Conventional weapons appear ineffective. We'd need to escalate too. No. Tarkin's interruption was sharp. Lord Vader's orders were explicit. The subject is to be captured intact. He represents an opportunity we cannot afford to waste. His thin lips curved into something approximating a smile. The rebellion destroyed our greatest weapon. Perhaps the Force has provided us with something far superior. The stranger Superman, as his own thoughts knew him, had allowed himself to be surrounded, not out of fear, but out of desperate hope that cooperation might yield answers. Stormtroopers formed a perimeter around him, weapons raised but not firing. Officers spoke into comlinks in hushed, urgent tones. And Superman waited, studying this strange military force with its white armor and rigid discipline. "I'll come peacefully," he called out, his voice carrying easily across the distance. "But I need information. Where am I? What's the name of this galaxy? How do I get home?" A colonel stepped forward, his posture military precise. "Those questions will be answered in time. For now, you will accompany us to a secure facility for processing. Resistance will be met with appropriate force." Superman almost laughed at that. Appropriate force. He'd withstood thermonuclear explosions, flown through the heart of stars, held dying suns in his hands. What could these soldiers possibly bring to bear that would threaten him? But something in their eyes, not cruelty exactly, but a cold certainty, made him reconsider. These weren't conquerors reveling in domination. They were professionals following orders, and that somehow made them more dangerous. He descended slowly, feet touching the regolith with barely a whisper of displaced dust. "I'm not your enemy," he said carefully. "I'm just lost. I was pursuing something important when I ended up here. If you can help me find it, or at least tell me where, we can part as friends." The colonel's expression didn't change. "Extend your arms." Superman complied, watching with mild curiosity as two technicians approached with what appeared to be restraints, metallic bands connected by a glowing energy field. They looked similar to handcuffs from his world, but the technology was distinctly alien. When they clamped the bands around his wrists, he felt a slight tingle, as if the device was attempting to suppress something. It failed, of course. Whatever energy-dampening technology they employed, it wasn't designed for Kryptonian physiology. He said nothing. Let them believe their restraints worked. Let them think him contained. Superman had learned long ago that sometimes cooperation revealed more than confrontation ever could. They transported him via a hovering vehicle they called a repulsor lift transport, flanked by what seemed like an excessive number of soldiers. The journey took them across barren moonscape to a facility carved directly into a canyon wall, all gunmetal gray and harsh angles, utterly utilitarian. Superman's enhanced hearing picked up countless conversations happening within. Soldiers discussing patrol rotations, officers debating containment protocols, scientists arguing over sensor calibrations. And underneath it all, a sound he recognized despite never having heard it before: fear. They were terrified of him. The holding cell was predictably inadequate. Reinforced walls, energy barriers, automated turrets, tracking his every movement. Superman sat on the bench provided and waited. His X-ray vision revealed the facility's layout in intricate detail, multiple levels, hundreds of personnel, weapons caches, and in the deepest section, what appeared to be interrogation chambers. He memorized every corridor, every exit, every potential civilian who might be caught in crossfire if things went wrong. Hours passed. Superman used the time to focus inward, analyzing the strange sensations permeating his body. The twin suns visible through the narrow viewport provided energy, but the radiation spectrum felt off. Like drinking water with an unfamiliar mineral content, nourishing but requiring adjustment. He estimated his strength at approximately 85% of normal capacity. His speed seemed similarly affected. Flight felt slightly more laborious, as if he were pushing against atmospheric resistance, even in vacuum. Most concerning was the strange energy he sensed everywhere, not electromagnetic, not gravitational, but something else entirely. It permeated the facility, the guards, the very structure of space-time itself. And it seemed to be studying him as much as he studied it. The door opened with a pneumatic hiss. The figure who entered moved with predatory grace, despite wearing armor that should have been cumbersome. Black from head to toe, with a helmet that concealed all humanity, and a respirator that turned breathing into a mechanical rhythm. But it was the presence that struck Superman, an oppressive weight that seemed to darken the air itself, a sensation of wrongness that made his Kryptonian instinct scream danger. "You are far from home," the figure said, voice synthesized into a deep, emotionless monotone. farther than you can possibly comprehend. Superman stood, maintaining careful distance. Who are you? I am Darth Vader, Dark Lord of the Sith. And you, stranger, are an anomaly that requires explanation. Vader circled slowly, like a predator assessing prey. You possess no connection to the Force, yet you command power that rivals it. Your mind is clouded, protected. I cannot read your thoughts as easily as I do others. Good, Superman replied evenly. Because my thoughts are my own. Vader stopped, tilting his helmeted head. Defiance. Curious. Most beings cower when they meet me. You do not fear death. I've died before, Superman said, the memory of Doomsday's assault flickering through his mind. It didn't take. For a long moment, Vader said nothing. Then, without warning, he extended his hand. Superman felt an invisible force grip his throat, not physical, but something else, something that bypassed conventional physics to directly affect his body. It was like telekinesis, but powered by something he couldn't see or measure. Superman didn't move. The pressure increased, enough to suffocate a normal human in seconds. But Kryptonian physiology didn't require breathing the same way. He could survive in vacuum indefinitely. This attack, while impressive, was ultimately ineffective. Vader's hand clenched tighter. The pressure became crushing. And still, Superman stood unaffected, merely watching the Dark Lord with calm, patient eyes. The grip released. Fascinating, Vader said softly. The Force affects you, but cannot harm you. You are not of this galaxy, are you? No, Superman admitted. I'm not. And I'm trying to find a way back. Then we have much to discuss. Vader turned toward the door. The Emperor will want to meet you. And I suggest you cooperate fully, stranger. Because if you do not... The mechanical breathing paused. There are fates worse than death in this galaxy. And some of them, even you might not survive. The interrogation chamber was designed to break spirits. Bare metal walls, a single harsh light, and instruments of psychological torture arranged with clinical precision. Superman had seen similar rooms on his own world, places where fear and pain were weaponized to extract compliance. He dismantled dozens of such facilities, rescued countless victims. The sight of this one made his jaw tighten. But he was the prisoner now, seated across from Darth Vader with energy, restraints humming around the table between them. Guards flanked the exits, weapons trained on him with the disciplined stillness of soldiers who knew their target could kill them all before they finished blinking. Superman kept his hands visible, his posture non-threatening. Violence was always a last resort. You claim to be from beyond this galaxy, Vader began, his synthesized voice echoing slightly in the confined space. Yet you speak our language fluently. You appear human, yet our scanners detect cellular anomalies that defy classification. Explain. Superman considered his words carefully. I don't know how I speak your language. Where I come from, I learned English and several others, but nothing like what you're speaking now. Yet I understand you perfectly, and you understand me. Maybe it's instinctive adaptation. My biology processes things differently. Your biology. Vader leaned forward slightly. The technicians report your cells absorb stellar radiation with impossible efficiency. You draw power from stars themselves. Yes. And this grants you your abilities? The strength, the invulnerability, the flight. Among other things. Superman met the black lenses of Vader's mask steadily. I'm not trying to be evasive. I just don't know how much you'll believe. On my world, I'm called Superman. I was born on a planet called Krypton, a world that died when its sun went supernova. My parents sent me to another planet, Earth, where the yellow sun's radiation gave me abilities beyond those of ordinary humans. Vader tilted his head. And now you find yourself here, in a galaxy governed by different laws. The Force permeates all living things in our reality. It binds us, guides us, connects us. Yet you exist outside this binding. You are an aberration. I prefer visitor. The respirator cycled several times, almost like a laugh, though without humor. Your restraints are ornamental. You allow yourself to be held. Why? Superman glanced at the energy bands around his wrists. Because breaking free would hurt people who are just following orders. I don't know enough about this situation yet. You're clearly a military power, but I don't know if you're defending something or oppressing it. I don't know if this is a legitimate government or a tyrannical regime. So I'm listening, learning. How principled. Vader stood, pacing slowly around the table. Tell me, Superman, what did you sense when I attempted to crush your throat with the Force? Something like telekinesis. An energy field that interfaces directly with matter, bypassing conventional physics. It felt almost alive. Intelligent, even. The Force is both energy and consciousness, Vader explained, his tone taking on an almost educational quality. It flows through all living beings, grants power to those strong enough to wield it. The Jedi once used it to maintain peace. Now it serves a greater purpose, order throughout the galaxy. Superman's enhanced hearing detected the slight emphasis on now. What happened to the Jedi? They were destroyed. Their weakness and dogma made them vulnerable. They clung to outdated philosophies, while chaos threatened to tear civilization apart. The Empire rose to fill the void they left, to bring stability through strength. Stability through strength. Superman repeated the phrase quietly. I've heard similar justifications before, usually from dictators who called themselves saviors. The temperature in the room seemed to drop. Vader stopped pacing, his hand drifting toward the cylindrical object hanging at his belt. You presume much for a captive. You asked for truth. I'm giving it. Superman leaned back slightly, demonstrating he wasn't preparing for combat. Look, I don't know the full story here. Maybe your empire genuinely maintains peace. Maybe the Jedi were as flawed as you say. But in my experience, when someone rules through fear and military might, they're usually protecting their power, not their people. Vader's hand closed around the cylinder, a lightsaber, Superman's X-ray vision confirmed, containing a focused plasma blade powered by a crystalline core. The technology was elegant, deadly, and completely unlike anything from his universe. The rebellion you indirectly reference is a terrorist organization. They destroy infrastructure, assassinate officials, murder innocent Imperial citizens. They offer only chaos and suffering. And what does your empire offer? Order, law, protection from the endless wars that plague the old republic. The Emperor brought peace to a galaxy tearing itself apart. Superman studied Vader carefully, using his enhanced vision to observe minute details. The slight tension in the Dark Lord's shoulders, the way his mechanical breathing hitched almost imperceptibly when mentioning the Emperor. This wasn't just loyalty. It was something deeper, complicated. You believe that, Superman said softly. At least partly. But there's something else. Something you're not saying. Vader ignited his lightsaber. The crimson blade hummed to life, casting bloody shadows across the walls. He didn't attack, simply held it, letting Superman see the weapon that had ended countless lives. You cannot read minds, yet you presume to understand mine? I don't need telepathy. I've met enough leaders, warriors, and enforcers to recognize the signs. You're powerful, maybe the most dangerous person I've encountered in this galaxy so far. But you're also serving someone you fear. The lightsaber extinguished with a snap hiss. You know nothing of fear. I know plenty about it. Superman's voice remained calm. Fear of failing people who depend on you. Fear that your power isn't enough. Fear that the choices you've made can't be unmade. He paused. I can hear your heartbeat through all that armor, you know. Through the machinery, keeping you alive. It's elevated. Not from anger, from something else. Vader turned away, facing the wall. For a long moment, only the mechanical breathing filled the silence. When he spoke again, his voice was quieter, almost contemplative. The Emperor sensed your arrival, before our forces even reported it. He has commanded that you be brought before him on Imperial Center. You will have the opportunity to serve the Empire, to use your considerable power for order and stability. Or you will be contained, studied, your biology dissected until we understand how to replicate it. Your powers harvested weaponized, deployed against the Emperor's enemies. Vader turned back. "You strike me as intelligent, Superman. You understand this galaxy is not yours. You have no allies here, no resources, no way home. The Empire offers you purpose, partnership, slavery, opportunity." Superman stood slowly, the restraints falling away as he simply pulled his arms apart. The energy bands designed to suppress Force users had no effect on Kryptonian strength. The guards immediately raised their weapons, but Vader waved them off with a casual gesture. "I'm not going to serve tyrant," Superman said firmly. "And I'm not going to let myself be turned into a weapon. But I'm also not going to fight my way out of here and risk killing people who don't deserve to die just because they're following orders." He looked directly into Vader's mask. "So here's what's going to happen. I'm going to leave, peacefully. And I'm going to find out the truth about this Empire and this rebellion. Then I'll decide what to do. You believe you can simply walk away? I know I can." Vader's hand moved toward his lightsaber again, but he didn't draw it. Instead, he activated his comlink. "All units, converge on Interrogation Chamber 7. Deploy the full garrison. Activate all defensive systems." "Don't do this," Superman warned. "Please. I don't want to hurt anyone." "Then surrender." The doors burst open. Stormtroopers flooded in, dozens of them, heavy weapons charging. Behind them, automated turrets descended from ceiling mounts, target locks painting Superman's chest with crimson designators. The walls themselves seemed to shift as ray shields activated, layering defensive barriers between Superman and the exits. Superman sighed. "I really hoped we could be reasonable about this." He moved. To the stormtroopers, he simply vanished. One moment standing near the table, the next gone, only a sonic boom echoing through the facility as he accelerated faster than their sensors could track. He appeared in the corridor, moving with precision born from years of experience. Every strike was calibrated to disable without killing. Blasters were crushed in armored fists before triggers could be pulled. Soldiers were gently pushed aside with just enough force to knock them unconscious without permanent injury. Vader pursued through the chaos, his connection to the Force allowing him to track movements no human should perceive. He hurled objects telekinetically, support beams, equipment crates, even entire wall sections, trying to slow Superman's escape. But the Kryptonian was already adapting to this galaxy's physics, his speed increasing as his body adjusted to the unfamiliar stellar radiation. An explosion rocked the facility as Superman punched through the outer wall, leaving a perfect outline of his body in the reinforced durasteel. He emerged into the moonscape, twin suns blazing overhead, and for a moment simply hovered there, looking back at the destruction he'd caused despite his best efforts to minimize it. Vader stood in the jagged opening, silhouetted against interior lights, cape billowing in the escaping atmosphere. "You cannot run forever, Superman. This galaxy is vast, but the Empire's reach is absolute. We will find you, and next time I will not be so merciful." Superman met his gaze one final time. "Neither will I, if I find out you're doing what I think you're doing." Then he was gone, a streak of blue and red vanishing into the star-studded black, leaving Vader alone with the wreckage and the growing certainty that the Emperor's interest in this stranger would reshape the entire galaxy, one way or another. Superman flew through the void between worlds, his cape streaming behind him in defiance of vacuum physics. The cold of space didn't touch him. Kryptonian biology processed even the harsh radiation of naked stellar winds as nourishment. But as he put distance between himself and the Imperial facility, he couldn't shake the weight of what he'd learned. An empire, a rebellion, a destroyed order of peacekeepers called Jedi. And, at the center of it all, something called the Force, an energy that seemed to govern reality itself in ways that made even his powers feel like mere physics by comparison. He needed information, allies, understanding. Below him, a planet swung into view, verdant and lush, covered in thick jungle canopy that stretched from pole to pole. His telescopic vision picked out structures hidden among the trees, ancient temples, weathered by centuries, reclaimed by nature, but still standing. and near one massive pyramid, he detected technology. Ships. People. Superman descended, slowing as he approached, wanting to appear non-threatening. The jungle rushed up to meet him, thick foliage parting, as he touched down in a clearing near the largest temple. The humidity hit him immediately, dense, oppressive, alive with the sounds of alien wildlife. His superhearing cataloged hundreds of species, from insectoid creatures chittering in the canopy to something large and reptilian moving through water nearby. The ships were military, starfighters marked with a symbol he didn't recognize. Red and white angular, clearly designed for atmospheric combat. Around them, personnel moved with practiced efficiency. Pilots performing maintenance, technicians running diagnostics, soldiers on patrol. They spotted him within seconds. Contact. Unknown approaching from the south perimeter. Weapons swiveled toward him, blasters similar to those the Imperial forces had carried, but older, more worn. The soldiers wore mismatched armor and clothing in shades of orange and tan, lacking the uniform precision of stormtrooper battalions. They looked tired, battle-worn, but their weapons remained steady. Superman raised his hands slowly, palms out. I'm not here to fight. I'm looking for information. Maybe help. A woman emerged from between the ships, her bearing military despite wearing a simple white combat suit. Dark hair pulled back, brown eyes sharp with intelligence and suspicion. She studied Superman with a careful assessment of someone accustomed to evaluating threats. You're not Imperial. Wrong armor. Wrong everything. Her hand rested on the blaster at her hip. Who are you? My name's Clark Kent. Some people call me Superman. And I'm very lost. Lost. The woman's eyes narrowed. Lost how? Different galaxy lost. Different universe lost, possibly. I was pulled through some kind of wormhole or dimensional rift while pursuing a piece of technology from my homeworld. I've been here less than a day, and I've already been captured, interrogated, and nearly turned into a science experiment by something called the Galactic Empire. Murmurs rippled through the assembled soldiers. The woman's expression shifted from suspicion to cautious interest. You escaped from an Imperial facility? Yes. On a moon near here. They weren't happy about it. I bet they weren't. She stepped closer, lowering her weapon slightly, but not holstering it. I'm Captain Sharabay, Alliance Intelligence. This is Yavin 4, and you just landed in the middle of a Rebel Alliance outpost. She gestured toward the ancient temple. The same rebellion the Empire probably told you were terrorists. Superman nodded slowly. Vader mentioned you. Said you destroy infrastructure, assassinate officials, cause chaos. And what do you think? I think I'm not making judgments until I understand both sides. Superman lowered his hands carefully. But I will say that the Empire imprisoned me within hours of my arrival, tried to suppress my will, and threatened to dissect me if I didn't comply. That doesn't exactly inspire confidence in their moral authority. Shara smiled grimly. Welcome to the galaxy, Superman. It's exactly as terrible as you're imagining. She holstered her blaster, making a decision. Come with me. Our leadership will want to hear your story. And maybe, just maybe, we can help each other. The temple interior was a stark contrast to Imperial architecture, where the facility had been all harsh angles and utilitarian efficiency. This place breathed history. Ancient stone walls carved with symbols Superman couldn't read, massive chambers that echoed with footsteps, and everywhere the sense that something profound had happened here long ago. The Rebel Command Center occupied what appeared to be a former meditation chamber. Holographic displays flickered alongside stone pillars, portable equipment jury-rigged to ancient power systems. Personnel moved between stations with the organized chaos of a military operation running on too few resources and too much desperation. At the center, a woman with auburn hair and regal bearing studied a tactical display. She wore white robes that spoke of authority despite their simplicity, and something about her presence reminded Superman of diplomats he'd known, people who wielded words and conviction as weapons as effectively as others wielded guns. She looked up as Shara approached, then did a double take seeing Superman. Captain, explain. Senator Organa, this is Clark Kent. also known as Superman. He claims to be from another galaxy, was captured by the Empire, and escaped from an Imperial facility approximately 70 kilometers from here. Shara paused. And based on the alerts I'm monitoring, the Empire is going absolutely insane trying to find him. The Senator, Organa, Superman filed the name away, studied him with eyes that had seen too much suffering and too much hope to be easily fooled. From another galaxy. That's quite a claim. I know how it sounds, Superman replied. But it's true. I'm trying to find a way home. And until I do, I'm trying to understand where I've ended up. Your Empire captured me the moment I arrived. They treated me like a weapon to be claimed, not a person to be helped. That's the Empire's way. Organa moved closer, circling him slowly. They see tools and resources, not people. You said you have abilities? That's how you escaped. Superman hesitated. Revealing his full capabilities felt dangerous, but concealing them felt dishonest. These people had guns trained on him, yet they'd welcomed him into their base, offered conversation instead of cells. They deserved some measure of trust. I'm stronger than I look. Faster. Tougher. Where I come from, my planet's yellow sun gave me abilities beyond normal humans. Here. He glanced toward the viewport, showing Yavin's orange primary and its distant companion. I'm still adjusting. The stellar radiation is different. I'm not at full strength yet, but I'm getting there. How strong? Strong enough that Imperial weapons couldn't hurt me. Strong enough that their best warrior, a man named Vader, couldn't kill me with some kind of telekinetic power he called the Force. Every person in the room went still. Organa's face paled slightly. You fought Darth Vader? And survived. I wouldn't call it a fight. More like, I refused to cooperate and he couldn't force me to. Literally. Superman met her gaze steadily. He wanted me to serve the Emperor, turn my abilities toward maintaining their order. I declined. The Empire doesn't accept refusal, Organa said quietly. They'll hunt you now. Relentlessly. Vader doesn't tolerate loose ends, and you become the biggest loose end in the galaxy. Let them hunt. Superman's voice carried quiet conviction. I've been hunted before. It never ends well for the hunters. Shara and several other soldiers exchanged glances, not fear exactly, but a kind of awed disbelief. Organa, however, looked thoughtful. You could leave. Fly away to some remote corner of the galaxy. Hide. Wait for an opportunity to find your way home. But you came here instead. Why? Because I need to understand what's happening, Superman said simply. On my world, I'm a protector. I stop threats, save lives, help people who can't help themselves. I can't do that here if I don't understand the situation. So I'm asking, tell me about this war. About the Empire and the Rebellion. Help me understand what's true. Organa was silent for a long moment. Then she gestured toward the holographic display. Come, I'll show you what we're fighting against. The images that followed were difficult to watch even for someone who'd witnessed atrocities across his own world. Planets under Imperial occupation, populations enslaved, entire species subjugated. The destruction of Alderaan, a peaceful world obliterated by a weapon station called the Death Star. Billions murdered in an instant to demonstrate Imperial power. Jedi hunted to extinction, their children killed or conscripted into the Inquisitorius. Dissenters executed publicly, freedoms crushed beneath militaristic tyranny. But there were other images too. Rebel attacks that killed civilians. Sabotage operations that destroyed vital infrastructure, leaving populations without power or medical supplies. The calculated risk of guerrilla warfare that accepted collateral damage as necessary cost. We're not perfect, Organa admitted quietly. War forces terrible choices. We use tactics that would horrify us in peacetime. People die, sometimes innocent people, because we don't have the resources or the precision to fight any other way. She turned to face him. But we're fighting against something that will enslave the entire galaxy if left unchecked. The Emperor and his apprentice, Vader, they're not just tyrants. They're something worse. Something connected to a darkness in the Force that corrupts everything it touches. Superman processed it all, his analytical mind sorting through implications and consequences. The Empire told me you were terrorists. You're telling me they're oppressors. The truth is probably somewhere in between. Probably, Organa agreed. But I'll ask you this. Which side imprisoned you without trial? Which side threatened to dissect you? Which side is currently mobilizing fleets to hunt you down? She had a point. I'm not asking you to join us, Organa continued. We can't offer you much, some information, maybe a place to hide while you search for your way home. But we can tell you this. The Empire will never let you go. They saw your power. They felt it. To them, you're either a weapon to be controlled or a threat to be eliminated. There's no middle ground with them. Superman looked out through the ancient temple windows at the jungle beyond, then up at the stars visible in the darkening sky. Somewhere out there, Vader was reporting to his emperor. Fleets were mobilizing. Soldiers were being deployed. All to capture one man who just wanted to go home. I need time, he said finally. Time to think, to observe, to make my own judgments. Take all the time you need, Organa replied. But know this, the Empire won't give you that luxury. They're coming, Superman. And when they do, you'll have to choose whether to fight, flee, or surrender. High above Yavin 4, the Superstar Destroyer Executor dropped out of hyperspace, flanked by a battle group that could reduce planets to cinders. On the bridge, Darth Vader stood before the viewport, his presence a physical weight that made junior officers avoid eye contact. Deploy all reconnaissance probes, he commanded. Find the stranger, and prepare a full planetary siege. If the rebels are sheltering him, we will extract him from their ashes. The hunt had begun. The rebel briefing room felt claustrophobic despite its ancient stone grandeur. Superman sat among Alliance officers, pilots, and soldiers, people whose faces bore the exhaustion of endless war. They studied him with expressions ranging from desperate hope to deep skepticism, as if unable to decide whether this stranger represented salvation or catastrophe. Commander Vanden Willard stood at the holographic display, his weathered features illuminated by tactical projections. Imperial probe droids confirmed entering the system 17 minutes ago. Long-range scanners detect a battle group in high orbit, 1 Superstar Destroyer, 6 Imperial-class Star Destroyers, support cruisers, and at least 70 TIE squadrons. He paused, letting the numbers sink in. They've positioned themselves to blockade the entire planet. Nothing gets in or out without their permission. They're here for him, someone muttered, glancing toward Superman. They're here for all of us, Organa corrected sharply. Vader's been hunting this base for months. Superman's arrival simply gave him the excuse to commit overwhelming force. She turned to Superman. But I won't lie, you're the priority target. They want you badly enough to risk this much Imperial hardware. Superman kept his voice steady despite the guilt gnawing at him. Then I'll leave. Led them away from here. You've been generous with information and hospitality. I won't repay that by bringing destruction down on you. Noble sentiment, Willard said dryly, but tactically useless. The moment you break atmosphere, their sensors will track you across half the galaxy. And more importantly, he gestured to the hologram showing their defensive positions. We can't evacuate in time. Our transports are scattered across 3 systems, resupplying. By the time we recall them, Vader's forces would be landing troops. So we fight, Captain Bay said, checking her blaster charge. We've fought impossible odds before. Not like this. Willard's expression was grim. Our usual strategy is hit-and-run, guerrilla tactics, evacuation before they can pin us down. But we're boxed in. The Executor alone carries more firepower than our entire defensive grid. We're looking at a siege we cannot win conventionally. Superman studied the tactical display, his mind racing through possibilities. What if you didn't fight conventionally? What if you had an asset that could engage Imperial forces directly? Every eye in the room fixed on him. Absolutely not, Organa said immediately. We're not asking you to become our weapon. That's exactly what the Empire wants, to turn you into a tool for their purposes. We won't do the same. You're not asking. I'm offering. Superman stood, approaching the hologram. You said I'd have to choose eventually, fight, flee, or surrender. I've made my choice. These people came here hunting me. I won't let others suffer, because I'm too afraid to act. It's not fear we're worried about, Willard interjected. It's pragmatism. We've seen what happens when individuals with extraordinary power get involved in wars. The Jedi were the greatest warriors the galaxy had ever known, and they were wiped out. Vader himself is a Force user of unprecedented strength, and he serves tyranny. Power doesn't guarantee victory, it just raises the stakes. Then let me raise them. Superman's jaw set with determination. You said the Executor is their command ship? That Vader's on board. Yes, but... Then, that's my target. I engage their capital ships directly, draw their forces away from the surface. While they're dealing with me, you evacuate your people, scatter into hyperspace. By the time they realize what happened, you're gone. The room erupted in overlapping voices. Objections, questions, tactical considerations shouted over one another. Organa raised her hand for silence. When it finally came, she spoke carefully. Superman, you're talking about attacking a superstar destroyer alone. That vessel is 19 kilometers long, carries thousands of crew, and mounts more weaponry than most planetary defense fleets. Even if you're as durable as you claim, they have weapons you haven't encountered. Turbolasers, ion cannons, experimental technology we don't even have names for. I've fought entire armies before. Superman's voice carried quiet confidence. I've stopped alien invasions, prevented nuclear disasters, held tectonic plates together during earthquakes. I know what I'm capable of, and I know when risks are worth taking. Shara Bey leaned forward. And if you fail, if they capture you, study you. Figure out how to replicate your abilities or find your weaknesses. You become exactly what Vader wanted, a weapon for the Empire. I won't be captured. The Jedi said the same thing. The words hung in the air like accusation. Superman met Bey's gaze steadily. I'm not Jedi. I don't use the Force. Whatever power they have doesn't apply to me. I've already proven that Vader can't simply crush me with telekinesis. And I'm not some mystical warrior bound by prophecy or philosophy. I'm just someone with abilities trying to do the right thing. Just someone, Willard repeated skeptically, who survived atmospheric re-entry without a ship, shrugged off military-grade weaponry, and walked away from Darth Vader. Forgive us if we're cautious about accepting help from someone we met less than 6 hours ago. It was a fair point. Superman had no history here, no track record these people could verify. To them, he was a variable too dangerous to trust fully and too valuable to dismiss. He understood their hesitation. In their position, he'd feel the same way. Then test me, he said simply. Give me a mission, something that proves I can be trusted before you commit to a larger plan. Organa and Willard exchanged looks, the kind of silent communication that spoke of long partnership and shared burdens. Finally, Organa nodded. There might be something. Willard. The commander pulled up a new display. 3 days ago, we intercepted Imperial communications about a convoy transporting prisoners to a labor camp in the Outer Rim. Among them are civilians from Alderaan, survivors who were off-world when the Death Star destroyed their home. The Empire is using them as forced labor and propaganda tools. Superman's fists clenched involuntarily. How many? Approximately 200. The convoy is lightly guarded, 3 transport ships, escort fighters, minimal capital ship support. The Empire doesn't expect resistance this deep in their territory. Willard highlighted the convoy's projected route. But here's the complication. They're moving through a densely populated shipping lane. Any battle risks civilian casualties. The transports themselves are filled with innocents. One stray shot, and we kill the people we're trying to save. So you need precision, Superman said, understanding immediately. Someone who can disable the escorts without destroying the transports. Someone who can board the ships without causing explosive decompression. Someone who can get the prisoners out safely while minimizing collateral damage. Someone exactly like you, Organa confirmed. If you're what you claim to be. But understand, This isn't just a test of your abilities. It's a test of your judgment. The easy solution is to destroy everything Imperial in that convoy. The right solution is to save everyone who deserves saving while stopping those who deserve stopping. Can you make that distinction in the heat of combat? Superman thought of Metropolis, of the countless times he'd faced similar choices. Save the hostages or stop the villain. Prevent the building collapse or pursue the terrorist. Protect the innocent or punish the guilty. The answers were never simple, but they always started from the same principle. Life was sacred, even when complicated. I can make that distinction, he said firmly. When do we move? The convoy will be in position in 14 hours, Willard said. But you'll be going alone. We can't spare ships for a rescue mission when Vader's fleet is in orbit. You'll have to fly there yourself, navigate by the coordinates we provide, and complete the mission without backup. I've worked alone before. Not in space combat, you haven't. Shara pulled up technical schematics. These are Imperial transport ships. The hatches are sealed from inside, magnetically locked. The escort fighters are TIE/LNS, fast, maneuverable, heavily armed. The pilots are trained professionals, not the conscripts you fought on the moon. And if they signal for help, you'll have Star Destroyers on your position in minutes. Superman studied the schematics, memorizing every detail with the precision his Kryptonian mind afforded. Docking mechanisms, structural weak points, life support systems, emergency protocols. He'd need to be surgical. No wasted movements, no unnecessary destruction. One more thing, Organa added quietly. If you're captured, we'll deny any knowledge of you. The rebellion can't afford to be associated with someone the Empire considers a galaxy-level threat. You'll be on your own. Understood. And if you succeed, if you prove you're truly here to help and not just another complication in an already impossible war, then we'll discuss your larger offer. The attack on the Executor, the evacuation plan, all of it. Her expression softened slightly. We want to trust you, Superman. We desperately need allies. But we've been betrayed before. We've seen good intentions twisted into tragedies. So prove yourself. Save those people. Then we'll talk about saving the galaxy. Superman nodded, accepting the terms. It was more than fair. It was exactly what he would have demanded in their position. Trust had to be earned, especially in wartime. As the briefing dispersed, he found himself standing alone at the viewport, staring up at the stars. Somewhere among those distant points of light was his home, his Earth, his metropolis, his Lois. People who depended on him, who believed in him. And here he was, trapped in an alien galaxy, about to involve himself in a war he barely understood. But that was the thing about being Superman. The details of the war didn't matter as much as the fundamental truth underneath. There were people suffering, people being enslaved, murdered, oppressed. And he had the power to stop it, or at least to try. Second thoughts. Shara's voice came from behind him. Always, Superman admitted. But I still move forward. That's either very brave or very stupid. Usually both. He turned to face her. Tell me something honestly. Do you think the rebellion can win? Not just survive, but actually defeat the Empire. Shara was quiet for a long moment. Honestly, I don't know. The Empire controls most of the galaxy. They have virtually unlimited resources, millions of soldiers, fleets that can blockade entire sectors. We're a scattered resistance force running on hope and desperation. She smiled sadly. But sometimes hope is enough. Sometimes one impossible victory inspires others. The Death Star's destruction proved the Empire isn't invincible. Maybe you'll prove something even more important. What's that? That the galaxy doesn't have to face tyranny alone. High above them, beyond atmosphere and orbital mechanics, Darth Vader stood in meditation. The stranger's presence blazed in his awareness like a foreign star, bright, hot, utterly disconnected from the Force, yet somehow resonant with it. The Emperor had been most interested in the reports, his ancient voice crackling with barely contained excitement. Bring him to me, Lord Vader. Alive if possible. But if he proves too dangerous, if he threatens our plans, destroy him. whatever the cost. Asterisk. Vader had acknowledged the command, but privately wondered, could this stranger even be destroyed? And, if not, what did that mean for the Empire's carefully orchestrated dominion? The hunt would provide answers, one way or another. The coordinates led Superman through an asteroid field in a region the rebels called the Atravis Sector, a lawless stretch of space where smugglers and pirates outnumbered Imperial patrols. Perfect cover for moving prisoners, the Empire wanted to disappear. His enhanced vision cut through the darkness, identifying the convoy from thousands of kilometers away. 3 bulky transports surrounded by a screen of TIE fighters moving in precise formation. He'd spent the flight studying everything the rebels had provided about Imperial tactics, technology, and typical engagement protocols. But theory and practice were different things. This would be his first real test in this galaxy, not just of his abilities, but of his capacity to operate by its rules. Superman slowed his approach, using the asteroids for cover. His X-ray vision penetrated the transport hulls, revealing cramped holding cells packed with humanoid figures. Men, women, children. Families huddled together in spaces designed for cargo, not people. The sight made his blood boil, but he forced himself to remain calm. Anger led to mistakes, and mistakes here meant innocent deaths. The TIE fighters maintained their patrol pattern with mechanical precision. 12 in total, 6 above the convoy, 6 below, rotating every 7 minutes. Their pilots communicated via encrypted channels Superman's super hearing could detect but not decipher. He'd have to be fast, disable the fighters before they could call for reinforcements, then breach the transports and override their security systems. He took a breath he didn't technically need, then moved. The first type pilot never knew what hit him. One moment his sensors were clear, the next, something impacted his starboard solar panel with enough force to send the fighter spinning. Not destroyed. Superman had calculated the strike to disable propulsion without rupturing the cockpit. The pilot would survive, just stranded until recovery. The second and third TIEs went down in similar fashion. Precision strikes that crumpled flight surfaces and shattered engine assemblies, but left life support intact. By the fourth, the remaining fighters had scattered, breaking formation as their comms erupted with panic chatter. Unidentified contact. Repeat, unidentified, hostile engaging convoy. Where? I don't see anything on scanners. Visual contact, it's a person. Something just ripped Sigma 4's wing off with its bare hands. Superman heard the fear in their voices and hated that he was causing it. These weren't monsters. They were pilots following orders, probably conscripts who'd never questioned Imperial propaganda. But they stood between him and 200 prisoners who deserved freedom. 2 TIEs dove toward him, laser cannons blazing. The emerald bolts struck Superman's chest and dissipated harmlessly, energy absorbed by cells designed to drink starlight. He caught one fighter by its viewport strut as it passed, using its momentum to swing it into its wingman. Both spiraled away, cockpits intact, but systems critically damaged. The remaining fighters broke off, accelerating hard. Superman's enhanced hearing caught their transmission. Alert Imperial Center. Unknown entity attacking convoy. Request immediate. He couldn't let that message complete. Superman accelerated, pushing his speed to limits he was still learning. The twin sun's radiation had strengthened him over the past hours, his cells adapting to the unfamiliar energy spectrum. He crossed the distance in seconds, ripping the communication array from the lead TIE's hull before the pilot could finish his distress call. Within 90 seconds of engagement, all 12 TIE fighters drifted disabled through the asteroid field. Not a single pilot dead. Not one cockpit breached. Superman had kept his promise to himself. Minimum force, maximum precision. Now came the hard part. The transports had begun emergency maneuvers, their pilots clearly trained for hijacking scenarios. They separated, accelerating in different directions, forcing Superman to choose which to pursue first. But their escape routes all led through the asteroid field's densest regions. Tactical thinking that would have worked against normal hijackers, but meant nothing to someone who could navigate by microscopic vision and react faster than human reflexes. Superman matched velocity with the nearest transport, pressed his hands against the hull, and began peeling away the outer armor plating like foil. The metal shrieked in protest, atmosphere venting from compromised sections. Too rough. He adjusted his grip, found the emergency airlock, and with careful pressure, simply tore it off its mounting. Alarms wailed as he entered. Emergency bulkheads slammed down, trying to contain the breach. Superman moved through them like they were paper, following his X-ray vision toward the holding cells. Behind him, he heard boots pounding, security forces responding to the intrusion. Halt. Identify yourself, or we will open fire. Superman turned to face 4 guards in Imperial officer uniforms, blaster rifles raised. Young men, probably early 20s, terrified but holding position. I'm here for the prisoners, he said calmly. Stand aside and you won't be hurt. The prisoners are property of the Galactic Empire. Release them and you commit treason against. Superman crossed the 10-meter distance in a blur, disarming all 4 before they could track his movement. The rifles crumpled in his grip, rendered useless but not exploded. I'm not from your galaxy, he said, lowering them gently to the deck. So your laws don't apply to me. But here's what does apply. Those people in the holding cells deserve freedom. If you try to stop me from giving it to them, you'll fail. If you're smart, you'll evacuate this ship before things get worse. One guard, braver or more foolish than the rest, drew a sidearm. Superman caught his wrist, carefully, so carefully, and squeezed just enough to make the bones creak. Not break. Never break unless absolutely necessary. Don't, he said quietly. Please. The guard dropped the weapon. Superman released him and continued toward the holding cells, leaving the security team stunned but unharmed behind him. The cell block was exactly as horrible as his X-ray vision had suggested. Families crammed into spaces meant for cargo containers, minimal food and water, no privacy, no dignity. The prisoners looked up as he approached, haunted eyes in gaunt faces, hope warring with fear. I'm here to rescue you, Superman announced, his voice carrying to all the cells simultaneously. My name is Superman. I'm with the Rebel Alliance. We're getting you out. The doors are magnetically sealed, an older woman said, her voice hoarse. Biometric locks keyed to Imperial officers. You can't. Superman gripped the nearest cell door and simply pulled. The magnetic seal screamed in protest, then failed catastrophically. The door came free in his hands, revealing a dozen prisoners staring at him in absolute shock. Can't is relative, he said, setting the door aside carefully. He moved from cell to cell, freeing them systematically. Each seal protested. Each door required slightly different pressure to remove without sending shrapnel flying. But within minutes, 200 prisoners stood free in the corridor, looking at Superman like he was a myth made manifest. The ship's compromised, Superman told them. We need to evacuate you to one of the other transports, or... An explosion rocked the ship. Superman's superhearing caught the distinctive whine of weapon systems powering up, then the thunder of turbolaser fire. Not from the transports, from above. His X-ray vision pierced the hull, and his heart sank. 3 Imperial Star Destroyers had dropped out of hyperspace, weapons hot, launching fresh TIE squadrons by the dozen. They called for backup, Superman realized. Before I disabled their comms, they must have gotten a partial signal through. The lead transport exploded under concentrated turbolaser fire, a brutal demonstration of Imperial willingness to sacrifice their own assets rather than let them be captured. The second transport began evasive maneuvers, but against Star Destroyer firepower, it was only buying seconds. Superman's mind raced through options. Get the prisoners to escape pods? The Star Destroyers would just destroy those 2. Commandeer the transport and try to outrun capital ships? Impossible. Take on 3 Star Destroyers directly? That left only one choice. Everyone brace for turbulence. Superman shouted. Then he flew straight up through the deck plating, through multiple levels of ship infrastructure, and emerged into space directly in the path of an incoming turbolaser barrage. The bolt struck him dead on, massive packets of concentrated energy designed to punch through capital ship armor. They should have vaporized any organic being instantly. Instead, they splashed across Superman's invulnerable body like water against stone. He felt the heat, the impact, the sheer overwhelming power, and absorbed it all, his Kryptonian cells converting the energy into fuel. The Star Destroyers hesitated, their targeting computers unable to process what their sensors were reporting. In that moment of confusion, Superman acted. He dove toward the nearest destroyer, accelerating to combat speed, and struck its primary sensor array with precision born from years of experience fighting impossible odds. The array exploded in a shower of sparks and debris. Immediately, the destroyer's targeting capability degraded, not destroyed, but significantly compromised. Superman didn't stop. He flew along the ship's surface, systematically destroying weapons emplacements, turbolaser batteries, shield generators. Each strike was calculated. Enough force to disable, not enough to cause catastrophic hull breaches that would kill crew. All weapons target the entity, an Imperial officer's voice crackled across open channels. Ignore the transports. Concentrate fire. And they did. 3 Star Destroyers turned their full arsenal on a single flying man. The space around Superman became a hellstorm of turbolaser fire, ion cannons, proton torpedoes, enough destructive power to level cities. He wove through it with impossible grace, his speed increasing as his body continued adapting to this galaxy's physics. Bolts that should have connected missed by centimeters. Explosions that should have caught him detonated just behind his cape. But he couldn't keep this up forever. Already he felt the strain, not physical exhaustion exactly, but a kind of systemic stress. The unfamiliar stellar radiation, the sheer volume of energy being thrown at him, the effort of maintaining precision while under overwhelming fire. He needed to end this quickly. Superman reversed direction, flying directly toward the lead Star Destroyer's bridge. The viewport loomed ahead, armored transparasteel designed to withstand micrometeorite impacts at relativistic speeds. He hit it at full velocity. The transparasteel cracked, but held. Superman punched it again. Then, again. On the 4th strike, it shattered, and he flew through into the bridge itself, coming to a hovering stop in the center of the command deck. Officers scattered, some drawing sidearms, others diving for cover. At the command station stood a man in an admiral's uniform, his expression shifting rapidly from shock to calculation. "You're him," the admiral said, hand moving toward his comm. "The entity Lord Vader is hunting. I'm the man saving prisoners your empire was planning to work to death," Superman corrected. "And you're going to cease fire and let those transports go. Now, or what? You'll kill everyone on this bridge." The admiral smiled coldly. "I think not. We have intelligence reports on you. You disabled our TIE fighters instead of destroying them. You could have ruptured our hull and killed thousands of crew, but you've been surgical in your attacks. You don't have the stomach for mass casualties." He was right, and they both knew it. "But I do," the admiral continued. He activated his comm, "All ships, continue firing. Destroy the transports. He won't stop us if it means killing Imperial personnel." Superman stared at him, at the officers watching to see what this strange being would do. They were testing him, calling his bluff, betting that his morality was a weakness they could exploit. They were wrong. "You're right," Superman said quietly. "I won't kill you, but I don't need to." He moved faster than human eyes could follow, systematically destroying every control station on the bridge. Navigation, weapons, communications, life support regulation, everything that made the Star Destroyer function as a warship. Sparks flew, officers shouted, alarms wailed. In 10 seconds, the bridge was reduced to a smoking ruin of shattered equipment and sparking circuitry. "You've just disabled your own ship," Superman said to the stunned admiral. "It'll take hours to restore command functions from auxiliary control. By then, those transports will be long gone." He turned toward the shattered viewport. "And next time you try to call my bluff, remember, I'm not from here. I don't follow your rules. I make my own." He flew back out into space, where the 2 remaining Star Destroyers had indeed continued firing on the transports. But their aim had degraded without their flagship's tactical coordination. Superman intercepted the shots he could, absorbed turbo-laser blasts meant for fragile ships, and systematically disabled weapon after weapon until the Imperial forces finally withdrew to regroup. The transports jumped to hyperspace the moment they had clear lanes, carrying their precious cargo of freed prisoners toward rebel rendezvous points. Superman watched them go, then turned back toward Yavin 4. His body ached in ways he couldn't quite define, not pain exactly, but a deep weariness that suggested he'd pushed himself harder than he'd realized. But he'd done it. Saved every single prisoner. Disabled 3 Star Destroyers without killing anyone. Proven he could be trusted. As he flew back toward the rebel base, Superman didn't notice the small Imperial probe droid that had recorded everything from the asteroid field shadows. Didn't see it calculating hyperspace coordinates back to the Executor. Didn't know that Darth Vader had watched the entire engagement via remote feed, analyzing every movement, every decision, every revealed capability. Fascinating, Vader murmured to himself. He limits himself deliberately, treats enemy lives as sacred even in combat. Such nobility. The Sith Lord's mechanical breathing cycled thoughtfully. Will be his undoing. Superman returned to Yavin for expecting gratitude, perhaps celebration. Instead, he found chaos. The rebel base was in full evacuation mode. Personnel sprinted between hangars loading equipment onto transport ships. Starfighters launched in continuous streams, disappearing into hyperspace the moment they cleared atmosphere. Ground defenses had been activated, anti-aircraft cannons, shield generators, everything the Alliance could muster against overwhelming assault. Because the Empire hadn't waited. Captain Bay intercepted him the moment he landed. Good timing. Vader's fleet started their attack 20 minutes ago. They're not bothering with a blockade anymore. They're coming straight down. She thrust a datapad into his hands. Your rescue mission succeeded. By the way, all 200 prisoners made it to safe houses. Commander Willard wanted you to know before. She trailed off, gesturing at the organized pandemonium around them. Before what? Before we evacuate or die trying. The Empire's committed 4-star destroyers to orbital bombardment. They're targeting the temple specifically. They know our command center is here. Shara's expression was grim. We've got maybe an hour before they reduce this entire section of jungle to molten glass. Superman looked up through the canopy, his telescopic vision piercing atmosphere to see the Star Destroyers in high orbit, their weapons arrays glowing as they charged for sustained barrage. Then let me stop them. I'll do what I did with the convoy. Disable their weapons, buy you time to evacuate. Against 4 capital ships simultaneously? You held off 3 before, barely, and you looked exhausted afterward. These ones will be ready for your tactics. Shara checked her chrono. Besides, Vader's not on any of those destroyers. He's still aboard the Executor in higher orbit, coordinating the siege. He's waiting. Waiting for what? For you to exhaust yourself fighting his forces. Then he comes down personally to finish what you're too tired to resist. She met his eyes. It's a trap, Superman. The whole siege is designed to drain you, test your limits, force you into impossible choices. Save the base or save the evacuating ships. Protect the ground forces or engage the orbital threat. Every decision splits your attention, makes you vulnerable. Superman's jaw tightened. She was right. It was textbook siege warfare adapted for an enemy who could fly through space and shrug off weapons fire. Vader had studied him, understood his psychology, and built a strategy around exploiting his heroic instincts. So what's the Alliance's plan? Scatter and regroup. We've already transmitted coordinates for fallback positions across 3 sectors. Personnel are evacuating via 12 different routes, making it impossible for the Empire to track everyone. Some of us will be captured or killed, but most will survive to fight another day. Shara's voice hardened. That's how the rebellion works. We don't fight battles we can't win. We survive, adapt, and strike when the Empire isn't looking. And you want me to run with you? I want you to survive. You're too valuable to waste in a battle designed specifically to kill you. Superman looked at the temple, ancient stone that had stood for millennia, now serving as shelter for people fighting against oppression. Families were evacuating from lower levels, children being carried toward transports by parents who'd already lost too much. Soldiers maintained defensive positions, knowing they were buying time with their lives. And somewhere up there, Vader waited like a patient predator for the perfect moment to strike. Every instinct Superman possessed screamed at him to stay and fight. Protect these people. Face Vader directly and end this threat. But his strategic mind, honed through years of fighting enemies who specifically targeted his psychology, recognized the danger. This was Lex Luthor's playbook. Create scenarios where Superman's strength became irrelevant and his compassion became a weapon against him. Senator Organa, Superman said as the rebel leader emerged from the command center carrying data storage devices, I need an honest assessment. If I engage Vader now on his terms, in a battle specifically designed to exploit my limitations in this galaxy, what are my odds? Organa stopped, studying him with those diplomats' eyes that saw too much. Unknown, you've demonstrated abilities beyond anything the Jedi possessed. But Vader was once the Jedi Order's greatest warrior before his fall to the dark side. He's fought and killed opponents who could predict his movements, manipulate time perception, even briefly survive in hard vacuum through the Force. And he's had decades to perfect his tactics against enemies with seemingly impossible advantages. So you think I'd lose? I think you'd fight to the death rather than retreat, and I think he's counting on that. Organa placed a hand on his shoulder, a surprisingly human gesture. Listen to me, Superman. Heroic last stands make inspiring stories, but this war isn't won by individuals sacrificing themselves gloriously. It's won by surviving, learning, and choosing the right battles. Today is not your battle. An explosion thundered overhead as the first turbolaser barrage struck the base's outer shields. The ground shook, ancient stone groaning under impact, stresses it was never designed to withstand. Red warning lights flooded the temple corridors. Shields at 60%, someone shouted. Next volley in 40 seconds. Willard appeared, battle-worn and urgent. Senator, we need to move now. The last transports are loading. If we wait any longer, we lose our window. Organa nodded, then turned back to Superman. There's a YT 1300 freighter in Hangar 7, old, reliable, fast hyperdrive. Take it. Jump to these coordinates. She pressed a data chip into his palm. It's a neutral system where we've arranged contacts. They can help you search for your way home while staying off the Empire scanners. When you're ready, when you've learned more about this galaxy and its conflicts, find us. We'll need you eventually. But not today. Not like this. Superman looked at the chip, then at the evacuation, then up at the sky, where star destroyers rained destruction. Every fiber of his being rebelled against retreat. Superman didn't abandon people in danger. Superman stayed and fought, no matter the odds. But Superman also learned from his mistakes. He'd charged headlong into traps before, Doomsday, Darkseid, Brainiac, and barely survived. Here, in an unfamiliar galaxy with powers that still operated at diminished capacity, walking into Vader's carefully orchestrated ambush wasn't heroic. It was stupid. I don't like this, he said finally. Neither do I, Organa replied. But war forces us to choose between bad options and worse ones. This is the bad option. Staying is the worse one. Another barrage struck, this time penetrating the shields. The temple's upper levels exploded in flames, ancient stone atomizing under directed energy weapons designed to crack planetary crusts. Somewhere below, Superman heard screams, people trapped, burning, dying because he wasn't moving fast enough to save them all simultaneously. The choice was made. Hangar 7, Superman said, his voice tight. The YT 1300. I'll take it. He looked at Organa. But I'm coming back. When I understand this galaxy better, when I've adapted fully to its physics and its powers, I'm coming back. And when I do, Vader and his empire will answer for this. I believe you. Organa smiled sadly. May the Force be with you, Superman. I don't think the Force and I are on speaking terms yet. Superman lifted into the air. but I hope you're right anyway. He flew toward Hangar 7, weaving through evacuation crowds and collapsing architecture. The freighter was exactly where organist said, battered, patched, but with engines that hummed with restrained power. He squeezed into the cockpit designed for being somewhat smaller than his Kryptonian frame and began startup sequences, his super speed reading through controls and adapting to alien technology faster than any organic being should manage. The engines roared to life. The hangar doors were already open, transports streaming out into chaos. Superman joined the flow, pushing the freighter's acceleration to limits its designers probably never anticipated. Turbo-laser fire crisscrossed the sky, but the Imperial forces were firing blind now, trying to hit dozens of ships scattering in all directions simultaneously. Superman broke atmosphere, and for a moment he had a clear view of the battlefield. 4-star destroyers in lower orbit, weapons glowing. The Executor in higher orbit, dark and patient, its presence like a predator watching wounded prey. And descending from that massive vessel, a single Lambda-class shuttle flanked by TIE fighters. Vader, coming down personally now that the evacuation had begun. Their eyes met across vacuum and distance, Superman's vision, so acute he could see through the shuttle's viewport to where Vader stood, one hand raised as if reaching toward him. And in that moment, Superman felt something he hadn't expected. The Sith Lord wasn't just hunting him. He was studying him, analyzing him, building a profile of capabilities, limitations, psychological triggers. This wasn't just a siege. It was reconnaissance. Superman punched the hyperdrive. Stars elongated into lines, and Yavin 4 disappeared behind him as he jumped to light speed, or whatever this galaxy called faster-than-light travel. The coordinates Organa provided pulled him toward the outer rim, toward systems too remote for heavy, Imperial presence. But as he flew, Superman couldn't shake the feeling that he'd just done exactly what Vader wanted. The Empire had dispersed the rebellion, proved they could chase Superman away from any fixed position, and demonstrated that his power, however vast, couldn't be everywhere at once. He'd saved 200 prisoners, but he'd lost his first major engagement with the Empire, and Vader had learned invaluable information about his capabilities and limitations in the process. Aboard the Executor, Darth Vader reviewed sensor logs from the engagement with detached interest. The stranger was powerful, yes, possibly even strong enough to challenge Vader directly in single combat. But power without strategy was merely potential waiting to be exploited. Grand Admiral, Vader said to the officer standing nearby, compile all data from today's engagements. Combat capabilities, reaction times, tactical priorities, psychological profile. I want a complete analysis delivered to the Emperor within 6 hours. At once, my lord. And the rebel survivors. Let them scatter. They are irrelevant. Vader turned toward the viewport, looking out at the stars where Superman had vanished. The stranger is what matters. He retreated today, learned caution. That makes him more dangerous, but also more predictable. He will seek information about this galaxy, allies, resources. He will try to understand the conflict before choosing his final allegiance. Should we track him, Lord? No need. I have already planted what I need. Vader allowed himself the smallest satisfaction. During their brief confrontation on the moon, when he'd gripped Superman's throat with the Force, he'd done more than test the stranger's resistance. He'd left a trace, the smallest fragment of dark side energy, woven into the stranger's bioelectric field. Not enough to control or harm him, but enough to sense his general location across vast distances. Wherever Superman went, whatever he did, Vader would know. And when the time came for their final confrontation, when the stranger had exhausted all other options and finally stood alone against the Empire's full might, Vader would be ready. Inform the Emperor that the hunt continues, Vader commanded. But the prey is ours whenever we choose to collect him. In hyperspace, Superman felt a strange chill run through his body, like fingernails scraping down his spine or shadows moving behind his eyes. He shook it off, attributing it to exhaustion and stress. He didn't know he'd been marked. The coordinates led Superman to a system called Terminus Deep, a forgotten corner of the Outer Rim where failed colonies and pirate havens clustered around a dying red giant. The star's weakened radiation made Superman feel sluggish. His powers diminished further than they'd been under the younger, hotter suns near Imperial space. It was strategic on the rebellion's part. Any place that weakened him would weaken Force users too, making it harder for Imperial agents to operate. The contact point was a way station built into a hollowed asteroid, its docking bays crowded with vessels sporting more patches than original hull plating. Superman guided the YT-1300 into a berth marked by a subtle rebel signal only visible to those who knew what frequency to scan. The moment he stepped off the boarding ramp, a Twi'lek woman with green skin and calculating eyes approached. "You're the one Senator Organis sent." She looked him up and down skeptically. "Expected someone more armed." "I am armed," Superman replied. "Just not with anything you can see." "Right. The stories about you are already spreading through Alliance channels." The man who shrugged off turbolaser fire and disabled 3-star destroyers alone. She extended a hand. "I'm Diana. I run intelligence networks in sectors the Empire thinks too worthless to monitor closely. The Senator asked me to help you get oriented, teach you about this galaxy before you get yourself killed doing something heroically stupid." Superman shook her hand carefully, mindful of his strength. "I appreciate that. I've been here less than 3 days, and I've already made powerful enemies." "You picked a fight with Vader. That's not making enemies. That's declaring war on the scariest thing in the galaxy." Diana gestured for him to follow. "Come on. I've got a secure room where we can talk without Imperial listening devices picking up our conversation. You've got a lot to learn, and not much time before Vader figures out where you've gone." The secure room was small, cramped, lined with signal-dampening equipment that hummed at frequencies Superman's superhearing found uncomfortable. Diana activated a holographic projector, displaying a map of the galaxy that made Superman's heart sink. Thousands of systems, millions of inhabited worlds, a civilization spanning an entire galaxy, all of it under Imperial control or contested by scattered rebellion forces. "Let's start with the basics," Diana said. "You're from somewhere else, another galaxy, another dimension, something. That means you don't know our history. About 70 years ago, the old Republic ruled for 1,000 generations. Not perfect, but stable. Then came the Clone Wars, a manufactured conflict orchestrated by a Sith Lord named Darth Sidious, who presented himself as a kindly politician named Palpatine." Superman listened as she unfolded a history of manipulation, betrayal, and genocide. How Palpatine engineered a war between the Republic and Separatist forces, playing both sides. How he turned the clone army against the Jedi in one night, executing Order 66 that slaughtered thousands of peacekeepers across the galaxy. How he transformed the Republic into the Empire, crowning himself Emperor with Vader, once a Jedi named Anakin Skywalker, as his enforcer. The Jedi were protectors, Diana explained, not warriors, despite what the Empire claims. They mediated disputes, kept the peace, used the Force to maintain balance. But they were also dogmatic, rigid, blind to threats they couldn't conceive. Palpatine exploited that blindness. By the time they realized what was happening, it was too late. And Vader was one of them, the best of them, supposedly. Chosen One prophecy, strongest Force user in generations, hero of the Clone Wars. Then he fell to the dark side. We don't know all the details, but the transformation was complete. Now he's the Emperor's right hand, hunting down surviving Jedi and crushing resistance wherever it appears. Superman processed this, his mind drawing uncomfortable parallels to his own world. So the Empire isn't just authoritarian. It's built on calculated deception and mass murder. Correct. And it maintains power through fear. The Death Star was just the most visible example, a weapon that could destroy planets, demonstrating that no world was safe from Imperial retaliation. Your friends in the rebellion destroyed it, which was a massive, symbolic victory. But it also made the Empire more vicious. They're cracking down harder, punishing entire systems for suspected rebel sympathies. That's why they were relocating those prisoners, making examples. Exactly. Diana changed a hologram to show various imperial atrocities. Slave labor camps, species-wide subjugation, systematic destruction of cultures that didn't conform to human-centric imperial ideology. The empire doesn't just conquer, it erases. Any culture, any species, any individual that doesn't fit their vision of galactic order gets ground into dust. Superman's fists clenched. This was worse than he'd imagined. Not just a political conflict between two legitimate factions, but a genuine tyranny enforced through systematic oppression. Everything Organa had shown him, everything Vader had revealed through his actions, it all pointed to the same conclusion. The Force, Superman said, changing subject. Explain it to me. How does it work? Why doesn't it affect me the same way? Diana pulled up scientific diagrams mixed with mystical symbolism. The Force is complicated. It's an energy field created by all living things. It binds the galaxy together, connects every organism through what Jedi called midi-chlorians, microscopic life forms in our cells that interface with the Force. Those sensitive to it can manipulate reality itself, move objects, predict futures, influence minds, even hold themselves together after fatal injuries. But I don't have midi-chlorians. Exactly. You're from outside this galaxy's natural order. Your cells operate on different principles, absorbing stellar radiation, processing energy in ways our scientists can barely measure. You're not connected to the Force because you literally evolved in a universe where it doesn't exist. She paused, which makes you both incredibly powerful and incredibly vulnerable. How vulnerable? The Force works on fundamental forces, gravity, energy, matter itself. A skilled Force user can accelerate particles into radiation, collapse matter into singularities, even tear holes in space-time. Vader's power is immense, but the Emperor's? Diana's voice dropped. The Emperor is something else. Ancient, patient. He's been planning his empire for decades, maybe longer. If he decides you're a threat, he'll bring powers against you that even your invulnerability might not withstand. Superman absorbed this soberly. He'd faced reality warpers before, MXYZPTLK, Darkseid with the anti-life equation, but always with the assumption that he was fighting in his home universe, where physical laws were familiar. Here, the rules were different. The Force represented something his Kryptonian biology wasn't designed to defend against. Then I need to get stronger, he said. Adapt fully to this galaxy's stellar radiation. Understand the Force even if I can't use it. Learn how to counter abilities I've never encountered. That takes time. Time the Empire won't give you. Diana deactivated the hologram. Senator Organa sent you here because you need to disappear for a while. Let the Empire's attention shift elsewhere. Let your legend become myth rather than immediate threat. Then, when you've learned what you need to learn, you strike from a position of knowledge rather than ignorance. It was sound advice. Superman had operated that way on his own world countless times, gathering intelligence, studying enemies, choosing engagements carefully. But everything in him rebelled against hiding while people suffered under imperial oppression. How long, he asked. Weeks. Maybe months. Long enough for... An alarm shrieked. Diana's face went pale as she checked her datapad. No, that's impossible. They couldn't have tracked you here. We took every precaution, What's happening? Imperial fleet just dropped out of hyperspace. 2-star destroyers and a full complement of TIE squadrons. They're broadcasting surrender demands, specifically mentioning you by name. Her hands flew across controls. They're not attacking yet. They're waiting. Like they want you to know they found you. Superman's blood ran cold. He'd been so careful. Jumped to hyperspace with no pursuit. Followed coordinates only the rebellion knew. Taken every precaution against tracking. How had they? The trace. When Vader gripped his throat with the Force, Superman had felt something foreign, invasive. He dismissed it as the natural sensation of telekinetic assault. But what if it had been more? What if Vader had marked him somehow, left a beacon that allowed the Empire to track him across the galaxy? I've led them right to you, Superman realized. Everyone in this station, they're in danger because of me. We're evacuating now, Diana said, already moving toward the door. Standard protocol when Imperial forces arrive. But they'll blockade the system, prevent hyperspace jumps. Most people won't make it out. Unless I give them what they want. Don't even think about. Superman was already moving. He burst through the station's walls, more gently than on Ryloth, having learned better control, and emerged into space. The star destroyers loomed in the distance, their white hulls stark against the red giant's dying light. Between them and the station, a single Lambda shuttle hung motionless, waiting. Superman flew toward it, not bothering with caution or tactics. If they wanted him, he'd give them a fight. But he'd make damn sure it happened far from the civilians evacuating behind him. As he approached, the shuttle's boarding ramp descended. And standing at the top, silhouetted against interior lights, was Darth Vader. The Sith Lord didn't speak, didn't move. Simply waited as Superman came to a hovering stop 5 meters away. You marked me, Superman said, anger threading through his voice. When you grabbed me on Ryloth, you left something in me that lets you track me across the galaxy. Yes. Vader's response was matter-of-fact. A fragment of the dark side, woven into your bioelectric field. Ingenious, really. You cannot remove it without understanding the Force, and you cannot understand the Force without training you will never receive. So this is it? You chase me across the galaxy forever? Attack everyone who helps me until I surrender? No. Vader descended the ramp, standing on it in open space as if gravity was optional. This is where you make a choice, Superman. I have studied you these past days. Watched how you fight, how you think, what you value. You are powerful, but you are also predictable. You will always choose others' safety over your own survival. It makes you noble. It also makes you controllable. Superman's jaw clenched. Get to the point. The point is this. The Emperor wants you. Alive, cooperative, serving the Empire. I have been instructed to extend one final offer before more permanent measures are taken. Vader gestured toward the Star Destroyers. Join us. Use your power to bring order to a chaotic galaxy. In exchange, the Empire ceases hunting you. The rebellion receives a temporary reprieve from our full attention, and you gain resources to potentially find your way home. You're offering me a bribe wrapped in threats. I am offering you reality. You cannot win this conflict, Superman. The Empire controls the galaxy. We have resources you cannot imagine, weapons you have never encountered, powers that transcend your physical might. You are one being in a galaxy of quadrillions. Your strength is finite. Ours is effectively limitless. I've heard that before. From dictators, warlords, gods who thought they were invincible. They all learned the same lesson, which is that one person standing for what's right can change everything. Vader was silent for a long moment. Then his respirator cycled something that might have been a sigh. I hoped you would see reason. The Emperor will be disappointed. He raised both hands, and Superman felt power unlike anything he'd experienced surge toward him. Not physical force, but something deeper. The dark side of the Force, channeled through a master of its most destructive applications. Lightning erupted from Vader's fingertips, crackling purple-white energy that bent space-time itself. It struck Superman dead on, and for the first time since arriving in this galaxy, he screamed. The lightning didn't burn, it unmade. Where turbolaser fire had splashed harmlessly against Superman's invulnerability, this energy carved through his defenses like they were paper. Not physically, but on some fundamental level that bypassed conventional biology. The Force lightning attacked the very binding of his cells, the quantum structure that made Kryptonian physiology possible. Superman tumbled through space, muscles spasming, vision whiting out. Pain, real, genuine pain, flooded his nervous system for the first time since childhood. On Earth, only kryptonite and magic could hurt him. Here, the Force proved equally effective. Vader didn't relent. He advanced through vacuum, one hand continuously channeling lightning while the other reached out telekinetically, trying to grip Superman's thrashing form and hold him in place. You see now, the Sith Lord's voice crackled across comms. Raw power means nothing against the Force. You are strong, but strength without connection to the fundamental energies of this galaxy makes you vulnerable. Superman forced his eyes open through the agony. His healing factor was working. Kryptonian cells repairing damage almost as fast as it occurred, but not fast enough. The lightning persisted, building in intensity, and beneath the pain Superman felt something worse. His cells weren't just being damaged. They were being studied. The dark side energy probed his biology, analyzing how he functioned, searching for deeper weaknesses. He had seconds before Vader learned too much. Superman grabbed the lightning, actually reached out and grabbed the energy with both hands, his invulnerability reasserting itself through sheer willpower. The dark side screamed against him, trying to tear itself free, but Superman held on. He'd absorbed nuclear explosions, channeled the sun's energy, survived Omega beams. This was just another form of power, deadly, alien, but still power. And power could be redirected. Superman pulled. The lightning bent, following his movement as he flew in a tight arc around Vader. The Sith Lord tried to cut off the flow, but Superman was already moving too fast, wrapping the energy around Vader's own armored form like a lasso. For a brief moment, the dark-side user was caught in his own attack, lightning crackling against his life support systems. Vader's respirator stuttered. His armor sparked. Then he pushed, and Superman felt an invisible force strike him like a planetary collision. He flew backward, tumbling through space, the lightning dissipating as Vader reasserted control. Both combatants paused, reassessing. "Fascinating," Vader said, his breathing labored but recovering. "You adapted. Used my own power against me despite having no force sensitivity." "How?" "Practice," Superman replied, shaking off the lingering pain. "I've fought enemies who wielded powers beyond physics. You're dangerous, Vader, but you're not the first impossible threat I've faced." "Perhaps not, but I am the one you face now, in a galaxy where your advantages diminish with every passing moment." Vader ignited his lightsaber, the crimson blade casting bloody light across his black armor. "Let us see how you fare against a weapon designed to cut through anything." He moved with frightening speed, not superhuman by Kryptonian standards, but enhanced by the Force into something far beyond human limitation. The lightsaber swept towards Superman's neck in a precise killing stroke. Superman caught the blade with his bare hand. The plasma should have severed his fingers. Instead, it pressed against Kryptonian skin and held, unable to penetrate. Heat radiated from the contact point, intense, but not enough to harm cells that could survive stellar cores. Superman squeezed, and the lightsaber's blade flickered, destabilized by the interference of his bioelectric field. Vader immediately shifted tactics, releasing the weapon and reaching out with both hands. This time the telekinesis didn't try to crush Superman. It pulled, attempting to draw him closer for some unknown attack. Superman resisted, his flight power countering the invisible grip, and for several seconds the two forces equalized, neither gaining ground. Then Vader spoke a single word in a language Superman didn't recognize, and the space between them shattered. Reality cracked like glass. Superman felt himself falling through layers of existence he didn't have words for. Not hyperspace, not normal space, but something else. The Force responding to Vader's command, tearing open a wound in space-time itself. For a terrifying moment, Superman experienced what it meant to exist outside the universe's physical laws, suspended in a void where light and gravity and time had no meaning. Vader was trying to exile him, send him somewhere, or someone that he could never return from. Superman's mind raced. He couldn't let that happen. But how do you fight something that redefines the rules of physics? His powers came from solar energy and Kryptonian biology, tangible, scientific, understandable. The Force operated on principles he didn't comprehend, wielded by someone with decades of experience. Think. What would Batman do? Analyze. Find the pattern. Exploit the weakness. The Force was tied to living things. Diana had said so. It flowed through organisms, connected them, required biological interface through midi-chlorians. Vader was channeling it, but he was also part of it. His power came from his connection, and that connection worked both ways. If Superman couldn't fight the Force directly, maybe he could fight what channeled it. He stopped resisting the pull, let himself be drawn toward the space-time wound, then at the last second reversed direction, flying faster than Vader's precognition could anticipate. He struck the Sith Lord dead on, not with fists, but with his entire body, accelerating to speeds that turned his mass into a kinetic missile. They smashed through the shuttle's hull, through its interior compartments, out the other side in a shower of debris and venting atmosphere. Vader's armor sparked, his respirator hiccuping, his concentration broken just enough for the space-time wound to collapse harmlessly. But Vader was already recovering, one hand reaching toward the nearest Star Destroyer. Superman felt the invisible pull of telekinesis, not on him, but on the massive capital ship. Vader was pulling it toward them, turning millions of tons of durasteel into a weapon guided by the Force. "You cannot win, Superman," Vader called across the void. "I am connected to everything in this galaxy. Every atom, every photon, every living being. The Force flows through me, and I through it. What are you connected to? A dead sun in a universe you cannot reach. You are alone here, and alone you will fall." The Star Destroyer accelerated impossibly, its engines firing in conjunction with Vader's telekinetic assault. Superman could dodge, but behind him was the way station, still evacuating civilians. If he moved, the Star Destroyer would crash into it, killing thousands. Vader knew it, was counting on it, using Superman's heroism as a weapon. Superman planted himself in space and braced. The Star Destroyer struck him at full velocity, 1,900 meters of armored warship moving at combat speed. The impact should have atomized any organic being. Instead, Superman caught it. His hands dug into the hull, his legs braced against nothing but will and flight power, and he stopped the entire vessel. The strain was immense, even at near full power. His cells finally adapting to the binary stars near Yavin. Superman felt the pressure. Millions of tons trying to crush him between their momentum and the way station behind him. His vision tunneled. His muscles screamed. Blood vessels burst and healed and burst again as his body pushed beyond its operational limits. But he held. The Star Destroyer's engines continued firing, trying to push forward. Superman pushed back harder, his hands sinking deeper into the hull, crumpling durasteel like aluminum. Crew inside would be experiencing catastrophic deceleration, injuries, casualties, chaos. But he couldn't stop that. All he could do was prevent total annihilation. Impressive. Vader's voice came from directly behind him. The Sith Lord had crossed the distance during Superman's distraction, lightsaber reignited, but ultimately futile. The blade swept toward Superman's exposed back. At the last instant, Superman twisted, using the Star Destroyer as leverage. The lightsaber missed flesh, and instead carved through the capital ship's primary reactor housing. Alarms shrieked. The reactor began destabilizing. No. Superman released the Star Destroyer and flew toward Vader. "You'll kill everyone on that ship. Then save them," Vader replied coldly. "Or fight me. You cannot do both." It was the ultimate test of character. The reactor would breach in seconds, vaporizing the Star Destroyer and everyone aboard. Imperial crew who'd been following orders, conscripts who'd never chosen this life. Superman could stop it, contain the explosion, save them all. But doing so would leave him vulnerable to Vader's killing stroke. Save his enemies or survive. For Superman, there was never a question. He flew into the Star Destroyer's compromised reactor chamber, found the breach, and pressed his body against it. Superheated plasma vented against his chest, energy that would have scoured continents. He absorbed it, channeled it, used his body as a containment vessel, while his heat vision sealed the breach from inside. Radiation that could sterilize planets washed over him, and he simply endured. Behind him, he heard Vader's approach, felt the lightsaber positioning for a decapitation strike. The Sith Lord had maneuvered perfectly. Superman was occupied, defenseless, unable to react in time. The blade descended, And Superman's heat vision erupted backward, faster than conscious thought, guided by super hearing that tracked Vader's exact position. Twin beams of concentrated thermal energy, each capable of melting through titanium, struck the Sith Lord's armor dead on. Vader staggered. His breastplate glowed red-hot. The life support system sparked and failed. For the first time in the battle, the Dark Lord made a sound of genuine pain. Superman finished sealing the reactor breach and spun to face Vader. The Sith Lord was already retreating, one hand pressed to his smoking armor, the other raised defensively. You are more resourceful than anticipated, and you're more predictable than you think. Superman advanced slowly, carefully, ready for any trick. You keep testing me, putting me in situations where I have to choose between fighting you or saving lives. But here's what you don't understand about me, Vader. I don't accept false choices. I save everyone, even my enemies. Noble, foolish, and ultimately irrelevant. Vader's respirator was failing, his breathing ragged. The Emperor is already en route. When he arrives, your nobility will be your undoing. Then let him come. I'll face him the same way I faced you. No, a voice whispered through the Force, ancient cold, filled with malevolence that made even vacuum seem warm by comparison. You will not. The space around them darkened. Not physically. The stars still shone, the ships still registered on sensors, but something fundamental changed. The universe itself seemed to recoil from a presence entering the system, and Superman felt his cells respond with instinctive terror. A new ship dropped from hyperspace, smaller than a star destroyer, black as the void, radiating wrongness like a physical force. And aboard it, Superman sensed something that made Vader seem like a flickering candle before a star's corona. The Emperor had arrived. The Emperor's ship was an insult to aesthetics, all sharp angles and predatory design, built not for efficiency, but for psychological impact. It reminded Superman of apocalypse technology, function subordinated to intimidation. As it glided between the star destroyers, even veteran Imperial crew seemed to shrink from its presence. Vader retreated immediately, flying toward his master's vessel, with damaged armor trailing sparks. Superman didn't pursue. Something about the approaching ship triggered every survival instinct his Kryptonian biology possessed. This wasn't just danger. This was wrongness on a fundamental level, like matter encountering antimatter. Superman, Diana's voice crackled over the commandeered comm frequency. Evacuations are 60% complete. If you can keep them occupied another 10 minutes. Get everyone out now, Superman interrupted, not taking his eyes off the Emperor's ship. Whatever's on that vessel, I don't think time measurements apply to it anymore. The ship's forward viewport illuminated, revealing a figure within. Even from kilometers away, Superman's telescopic vision picked out details. An old man in dark robes, hunched with age, face hidden beneath a hood. Unremarkable by appearance. But the presence, it pressed against reality itself like a black hole pressed against spacetime. When the Emperor spoke, his voice didn't transmit through comms. It simply existed, vibrating through the Force in ways that bypassed technology entirely. Superman heard it despite having no connection to that mystical energy, felt it resonating in his bones, his cells, the quantum foam of space around him. So, the anomaly that has disrupted my empire. The words dripped with curiosity and contempt in equal measure. A being from beyond our galaxy, wielding power divorced from the Force. Fascinating, and deeply, deeply troublesome. Superman floated in space, maintaining position between the Emperor and the way station. If you're here to make the same offer Vader did, save your breath. I'm not interested in serving tyranny. Serve. The Emperor's laugh was worse than his words, ancient, knowing, filled with dark amusement. Oh, my dear boy, I have no intention of asking you to serve. You misunderstand your situation entirely. You are not a potential recruit. You are a problem. And I have spent my very long life learning to solve problems. The old man raised one withered hand. Lightning erupted from his fingertips, not the purple-white energy Vader had wielded, but something darker. Sickly green shot through with absolute black, crackling with malevolence that seemed to poison reality itself wherever it touched. It struck Superman with force that made Vader's assault feel like static electricity. Pain beyond description flooded every nerve. This wasn't just dark side energy. This was the dark side's purest expression, channeled through someone who'd spent decades mastering its most forbidden techniques. The Emperor wasn't trying to disable Superman. He was trying to corrupt him, rewrite his biology at the cellular level, transform invulnerability into weakness by turning Superman's own body against itself. Superman screamed. Actually screamed. Something he rarely did even under the worst torture. His cells fought the invasion. Kryptonian DNA resisting corruption with stubbornness born from surviving a planet's death. But the dark side was patient. It probed, searched, found the microscopic traces Vader had left during their first encounter, and exploited them. You see, the Emperor continued conversationally, maintaining the lightning without visible effort. The Force is not merely power. It is will made manifest. And my will has reshaped this galaxy according to my design. Your presence threatens that design. Therefore, you must be unmade. Superman tried to move, to fly, to escape the torrent of corrupting energy. But the Emperor's other hand raised, and suddenly space itself became a prison. Not telekinetic crushing, something far more sophisticated. The Force bending gravitational constants, altering the Higgs field, making Superman's mass infinite and his energy zero simultaneously. He couldn't move, couldn't absorb solar radiation, couldn't even think clearly through the dark side's assault on his mind. I sense your thoughts, the Emperor whispered. You believe yourself heroic, noble, a protector of the weak. But what are you truly, Superman? An alien clinging to power derived from stellar energy. Remove that energy, and you become nothing. Whereas the lightning intensified. I am eternal. The dark side sustains me beyond death itself. Your invulnerability is temporary. My power is absolute. Superman's vision was failing. His healing factor couldn't keep pace with damage occurring at the quantum level. He was dying, actually genuinely dying, and there was nothing he could do to stop it. Then he heard something. Faint, distant, but growing stronger. Engines. Dozens of them. The rebel evacuation fleet had reversed course. Instead of fleeing to hyperspace, they were accelerating toward the battle. Weapons charging. Fighters, transports, even civilian vessels. Everyone who'd been evacuating now flying directly into a battlefield against overwhelming Imperial force. Sir, rebel forces approaching. An Imperial officer's voice crackled over open channels. They're targeting the Emperor's ship. Let them come, the Emperor replied, not even glancing at the incoming vessels. They will witness their would-be savior's destruction. It will break what remains of their spirit. But Superman heard something else in those approaching ships. Diana's voice broadcasting on all frequencies. All vessels, attack pattern Delta. Concentrate fire on the throne ship. Ignore the star destroyers. We only get one shot at this. They were sacrificing themselves, throwing away their only chance at escape to buy him seconds, maybe minutes, of distraction. People he'd known for hours, choosing to die rather than let him fall alone. It was the most foolishly, beautifully human thing Superman had ever witnessed. And it gave him the opening he needed. The Emperor's attention flickered, just for an instant, toward the approaching rebel fleet. His concentration wavered as he calculated whether they posed genuine threat. The dark side energy faltered, and Superman's cells seized the opportunity. Kryptonian biology was designed for survival under the harshest conditions imaginable. His ancestors had endured a planet's geological apocalypse, adapted to Krypton's crushing gravity and intense radiation. That genetic legacy surged now, fighting back against corruption with primal ferocity. Superman pulled solar energy from every available source. The distant red giant, starlight reflecting off the star destroyers, even residual radiation from the reactor he'd just contained. It wasn't enough to heal completely, but it was enough to move. He flew. Not toward the Emperor. That would be suicide. Instead, he accelerated toward the nearest star destroyer at speeds approaching relativistic velocity. The flagship's crew saw him coming too late. Superman struck the vessel's command tower with every ounce of strength remaining, tearing through armor plating, shield generators, and structural supports in a single devastating impact. The tower collapsed, systems failing cascade style throughout the ship. But more importantly, the Star Destroyer began listing, its mass and momentum suddenly unstable, trajectory shifting toward the Emperor's throne ship. Evasive maneuvers. Imperial officers screamed. The flagship is out of control. The Emperor's concentration broke completely. His lightning ceased as he diverted power to telekinetically stopping the Star Destroyer's collision course. 1,900 meters of dying warship ground to a halt mere kilometers from his vessel, held in place by force power that would have crushed Superman earlier. But it took both hands. Both hands and total focus. Superman flew through the gap, past the suspended Star Destroyer, past the Emperor's ship, pushing his battered body to speeds he'd never attempted before. Behind him, the rebel fleet engaged Imperial forces in desperate combat. Ahead only empty space and the freedom to escape. He wanted to turn back. Every instinct screamed to help the rebels, to finish the fight with the Emperor while he had the chance. But Superman recognized the cold truth. He would lose. The Emperor was something beyond even Darkseid, ancient patient, wielding powers Superman had no defense against. Not yet. Not until he understood this galaxy better, adapted more completely, found ways to counter the Darkseid's reality-warping capabilities. Today was about survival, learning, preparing for the rematch. Superman jumped to hyperspace using coordinates pulled from the YT-1300's navicomputer before abandoning the ship. The stars elongated, and the battlefield vanished behind him. In the silence of faster-than-light travel, Superman finally allowed himself to assess the damage. His costume was shredded. His body bore wounds that would take days to heal even with solar radiation. And something darker lingered. Traces of Darkseid energy still circulating through his cells like poison, resisting his immune system's attempts to purge it. The Emperor had marked him just as Vader had. But this mark was deeper, more insidious. A connection that let the old monster sense Superman's location, read his surface thoughts, perhaps even influence his actions if he wasn't vigilant. Superman would need to find a way to break that connection. Learn about the Force, understand its principles, discover methods to shield himself from its corrupting influence. The Jedi were extinct, but there had to be holocrons, ancient texts, something that could teach an outsider how to resist powers he couldn't wield. His calm crackled, Diana's voice weak but alive. Superman, if you're receiving this, good. You made it out. Most of us didn't. The Emperor destroyed half our fleet before letting the rest scatter. But we bought you time. Use it well. I will, Superman transmitted back, not knowing if she could hear. I promise. The coordinates led him to a remote system near the galaxy's edge, a place called Ilum, once home to Jedi temples and Kyber crystal caves. Long abandoned after the Purge, but rebel intelligence suggested ancient knowledge might remain in its frozen wastes. Superman emerged from hyperspace, above an ice world bathed in the light of a blue giant star. Already, he felt his powers strengthening. This stellar radiation more compatible with Kryptonian physiology than anything he'd encountered so far. He descended through blizzards toward mountain ranges where temples once stood, searching for answers in ruins older than most civilizations. The Emperor had won today's battle, demonstrated that raw power wasn't enough against someone who'd mastered reality manipulation. But Superman had learned valuable lessons. The Force had limits. It required concentration, drained even the Emperor when used maximally, and followed rules Superman could potentially exploit. The dark side corrupted, but Kryptonian biology resisted corruption. And most importantly, he wasn't alone. People in this galaxy were willing to fight impossible odds against tyranny, just as they did on his Earth. As he landed among ancient stones and snow-covered statues, Superman made himself a promise. He would learn, adapt, grow stronger, find the knowledge necessary to counter Force users and resist the dark side's influence. And when he was ready, When he truly understood this galaxy and its conflicts, he would return. The Empire had made an enemy, today. One that wouldn't stop, wouldn't surrender, and wouldn't accept a galaxy ruled by fear and oppression. Darth Vader and Emperor Palpatine would learn what others had learned before them, that hope, once kindled, couldn't be extinguished by darkness alone. And Superman represented something this galaxy hadn't seen in decades. Genuine hope backed by power sufficient to make it real. The war was far from over. In many ways, it was just beginning. The ice caves of Ilum held secrets the Empire believed buried forever. Ancient Jedi holocrons, their crystalline matrices dormant but intact, waited in chambers preserved by cold and isolation. Superman spent weeks there, learning what he could from fragmented recordings, masters long dead teaching lessons about balance, discipline, and the Force's fundamental nature. He couldn't wield the Force. His biology remained divorced from the midichlorians that connected this galaxy's inhabitants to that mystical energy. But he could understand it, recognize its patterns, develop countermeasures against techniques that had nearly killed him. The Emperor's corruption still lingered in his cells, but Superman learned meditation techniques that slowed its spread, contained its influence, bought him time to find a permanent solution. Most importantly, he learned about the prophecy, the chosen one who would bring balance to the Force. The Jedi had believed it was Anakin Skywalker, the man who became Vader. They'd been wrong about the timing, perhaps, but not necessarily about the person. Somewhere beneath that armor and hatred Superman sensed was someone who'd once fought for justice. Maybe that person could be reached. Maybe redemption was possible even for someone who'd fallen so far. Or maybe Superman was being naive, applying his own world's values to a galaxy that operated by harsher rules. Time would tell. The rebellion eventually found him through the network Diana had established before her death in the battle above Terminus Deep. They brought news. The Empire was consolidating power, but cracks were showing. The Death Star's destruction had inspired systems to resist openly. Vader's obsessive hunt for Superman had diverted resources from other operations. And rumors spread across the galaxy about a man who could fight Sith Lords to a standstill. A legend that gave hope to beings who'd forgotten what hope felt like. Senator Organa offered him a place in their fight, not as a weapon, but as a symbol. Someone who proved the Empire wasn't invincible, that power could be challenged, that tyranny would eventually face judgment. Superman accepted, not because he'd given up on finding his way home. He still searched for the Kryptonian probe, still sought dimensional rifts that might lead back to his universe. But because some things transcended personal desires. There were people suffering, a galaxy crying out for heroes. And, until he could return to his own world, this one needed him. He established a base in the Outer Rim, far from Imperial patrols, but accessible to rebel cells. He took missions that matched his abilities, rescuing prisoners, disabling weapons platforms, evacuating civilians from war zones. He avoided direct confrontation with Vader or the Emperor, knowing he wasn't ready for that rematch yet. But every mission made him stronger, more adapted, more capable of functioning in this alien galaxy. The twin suns and binary stars slowly rewrote his cellular structure, teaching his Kryptonian biology to process unfamiliar radiation spectrums with increasing efficiency. His powers grew, not beyond what they'd been on Earth, but approaching that level. Flight became effortless again. Strength returned to its full magnitude, and his tactical understanding of Force abilities improved with each encounter. He met Luke Skywalker eventually, a young rebel pilot with raw Force sensitivity and idealism that reminded Superman painfully of himself at that age. They became unlikely allies, the Jedi in training and the Kryptonian outsider, both seeking to bring light to a galaxy drowning in darkness. Together, they began to understand something the Empire hadn't accounted for. That power alone didn't determine victory. Connection mattered. Hope mattered. The willingness to sacrifice for others, to stand against impossible odds, to believe that tomorrow could be better than today. These were forces as potent as the dark side, maybe more so. The war continued. The Empire remained dominant. Vader still hunted him through the stars, their encounters growing more dangerous as the Sith Lord adapted his tactics to counter Superman's abilities. The Emperor watched from his throne, patient and ancient, planning moves decades in advance. But Superman had found something in this galaxy worth fighting for. Not just a way home, but a cause that mattered, people who deserve protection, and a chance to prove that even in a universe governed by the Force, an outsider could make a difference. He was Superman. He'd faced impossible odds before. And whether in his own galaxy or one far, far away, his answer to tyranny remained the same: unwavering opposition, tempered by compassion, backed by power sufficient to make hope real. The Empire had declared war on him. He accepted. And in the years to come, they would learn what others had learned across countless worlds and timelines: that symbols were harder to kill than men, that hope was more resilient than fear, and that sometimes the stranger who falls from the stars changes everything. May the Force be with him, and may his own strength, drawn from a sun he could no longer see, prove sufficient for the battles ahead. The legend was just beginning.